working? It's working. We're live. Welcome. It only just started on my screen. I don't know whether that accounts for all the other seconds disappearing or something, or whether there was a latency issue. I don't know. Welcome. Unless you're already running away and leaving, and then goodbye. Sorry for disappointing you. But the what we're dealing with in this stream, and it's probably only going to be a quick one. There's only a small bit of information for me to really go off at the moment. Is not just the mistreatment of Romanis, but the mistreatment of looters in general. And I mean, the way in which looters are being used as this perceived enemy to endorse racism. I mean, it goes one way, for one thing, one way for another. I mean, there were shops. There's one quote in one of my sentences that like shops, you can grab what you need, free to help out and all that. But then it goes, P.S. Looters should be shot. So, what's it? Prefacing it isn't gonna tell it as good as what the imagery of which I'm gonna be presenting here. So let's get Wagwan on the screen. I know what I'm doing. Look at this shit. I can make this better. 1 second. Here to you. This is a Romani woman. Another Romani. Oh, sorry, I went too fast. Another Romani woman. Another Romani woman. Tied to poles, face painted, humiliated, ain't able to move. This is in Lvov. They are treated to some Western civilization. This is the least of the worst that is happening to the Romani people who are being persecuted right now in Ukraine. There are other reports of there's other reports of Romani people basically being told to strip off naked in the snow, like it says here. These ones are lucky. Others get stripped and left in the cold to be abused or even raped. Ukraine is terribly fucked right now. And if I remember rightly, although I might be wrong, I'm pretty sure this Twitter account is from my friend, who I haven't spoken to for quite some time. African Stalin is a legend. I think it is him. I'm not sure. It seems weird for him to be quoting on something that says Labor Wave CCCP because he doesn't like China. But nonetheless, what's it? I know that his name is also Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin on Twitter, but I haven't been on Twitter for a while, and I can't remember what his name is, so the could be different for all I know. But yeah, others are being stripped off and are being forcefully humiliated out in the freezing cold and on a lot of occasions raped. There's also a case of women being tied to poles and declothed while they're tied to the poles as well, rather than just being tied and painted in the way in which they've been presented here. But I want you to look at this image here. What is that on the left of that woman? That is a soldier. This is someone that is either being facilitated by or looked past and over at the least of by the Ukraine military. Given what we were talking about, I can't remember, was it last week or was it the week before? I think it was last week. Yeah, it was last week. What we were talking about last week. How the Ukrainian military was persecuting not just Arab people, but also other immigrants, but also Romani people and Uh, I can't remember what else was there, but I swear there was someone else. But at the end of the day, the military was involved in this, and at checkpoints they were forcing people out in the cold without any proper warmth or anything like that, no food or anything to do all these different. One of them was stand still, absolutely still, can't move. People who are complaining they were cold in another instance were told they had to dance to keep warm. People weren't allowed to go to the toilet when they were stood where they are. They were told to just fucking piss themselves where they're at. You know, absolute mistreatment of these people, dehumanization, gawky in them. This is taking it a step up. This is moving things into an even worse state of being, because this is tying people up without the intention of letting it go for a lot of occasions. I mean, when we look at a looter, in another instance, you'll find that there's a police car parked literally right in front of the picture of the looter, and the looter's still tied up. Ukrainian military is involved with and is facilitating this problem. Just trying to get it at a perfect aspect. Yeah, okay. The issue with cigarettes, they burn down when you're not smoking them. Civilians still, looter tied up and humiliated for trying to steal during the Russian attack on Kiev. One thing I find quite interesting, because this is the proper spelling of Kiev, it is spelled Kyiv. The Russian spelling and pronunciation is Kiev with the IEV, and the Russians pronunciate it Kiev instead of Kiev. Well, actually, I don't even think it's Kiev. I think it's a little more in between Kiev and Kiev, but basically, that's the two pronunciations: Russian Kiev and Ukrainian Kiev. But it's quite interesting because before the Ukrainian crisis, any English tabloid would have used Kiev, not Kiev. And for us trying to be accurate, we call it Donetsk and not Donbass. Donetsk is the British name for it, not. Hello. Uh, Civilians still living in Ukrainian cities are carrying out their own punishment on those caught looting as supplies run low with the Russian army encircling them. Yep, this is Mirror coming by the in defense of the mistreatment of people like this. Uh, Not that we're unsurprised that a British tabloid would be doing something like this, but I just find it so telling. Because this is supposed to be the supposed left wing newspaper of Britain is supposed to be things like is it like the Mirror and the Guardian and all that? They're supposed to be like the mainstream left. Fuck off. They all suck the same cock at the end of the day. They all tickle the same sausage. I don't know. I don't know what the saying is. Go with whatever saying you want to go. They all munch the same carpet. With fucking. Well, I mean, to be fair, I should have made a bum eating joke. That would have been the most relevant. Because let's be real, the biggest shitheads they are also shit eaters. Not trying to scat shame. They all shit in the same hole. That's a good one. There we go. Maybe that's a bit graphic. Why won't it go out? So, yeah, I have a spliff too. Don't judge me. Um, a man caught looting in homes abandoned by people terrified of the Russian war machine stands strapped to a lamppost with his trousers down as punishment. The criminal, who seems to be a young man, was pictured outside near a patrol station in Ukraine's capital city, Kyiv, unable to move after being caught by locals. Wearing a blue hoodie, his trousers have been pulled down to his knees as local people have made an example of him. Um, uh, a police car stands nearby, but it's unclear if the officers have arrived to save him from his humiliating predicament or enforce the punishment. Given they're parked there and not doing anything, I would say the opposite, because they would be preventing people continuing to take photos and they would be stopping this man approaching him. I think the police are very much on the side of the dehumanization of this person. And no one seems to, has anyone considered asking the question, why might be someone in that position where they're having to loot? People who have things in life typically don't default to the mentality of looting. They can, and I'm sure they can. I know that all that possibility is there. Lumpen aristocrats are thievy little fuckers. But normally when someone is driven to the point of looting, it's because that they need something, anything. Because, don't know if you know this, but having like a stereo or TV or something ain't gonna be what people are looking for in a crisis like this. Like, who the fuck is gonna buy it off you in Ukraine? Who the fuck in Ukraine in a war is gonna go, yep, you know what? I need me a flat screen TV, or I need me this, that, and the. They're not after luxuries. Do you know what they're after? Fucking food. Because Ukrainian stores have been turning people down who aren't seen as, who aren't seen as Ukrainian, but I can guarantee you they're also turning down the poorest of Ukrainians, because class is always an antagonistic point in war, and they're going to mistreat the poorest of Ukrainians to ensure that their big buddies in the more aristocratic of positions have what they need, because they want to provide for those who are in the most well-off positions, and not just the aristocratic ones. I'm also on about the bourgeoisified sector of the working class. Those who are in the lower working class or in a lumpen proletarian position will also be denied, because they're denied if they're denied in a normal situation when food isn't a fucking crisis, they're going to be denied when food is in crisis. That's just simple logic. Other reports of looters being made examples of by people refusing to allow the situation in the capital to unravel have also emerged from the scenes of destruction. The looter is approached by a member of the public. That's the image thing. Several videos have been shared on social media channels of people taped to lampposts in the under siege country with their trousers down. Yeah, and the majority of these people, from what I've been told, I don't care if there's anecdotal issues there, but from what I've been told by multiple people, is that the majority of those people who are looters, and I don't know the full legitimacy of that statement. We all know terms like this get abused. I mean, anyone and everyone in Black Lives Matter was referred to as looters. So take that in fucking mind. Racial minorities, whether they're rising up or not, are typically criminalized in this fashion. And Romani in Europe have the same bullshit strewn upon them of them being natively criminal that African Americans do. Actually, it's really, really bad, the treatment of Romani travelers and Romani people in general, how they're expected to be looters in normal stance. I mean, it's the common thing you always hear about people who are against Romani and Irish travelers, is they make this concept of them essentially being looting parties. So keep that in mind here. And that, we've been hearing of all this of people being tied to lampposts, and especially with trousers down. A lot of these people being Romani women, and those Romani women are also being raped on a lot of occasions. We then also have the worst situation where they're being stripped down and chucked out in the cold, like in snow conditions, cold. Um, some include footage of people being whipped on their bare bottoms. Really take into consideration the dynamic there. One user said, quote, another video of punishing marauders in Ukraine, end quote. Well, they didn't put the end quote because whoever typed this forgot to. One user said, sorry, my country isn't for looters, in quotations. Forgot to open and close quotes. And in Odessa, a sign posted on in a market read, quote, dear customers, I'm a volunteer. That's why no seller here. Just self-service. Take it for free if you have no money. Slava Ukraine, Slava Odessa. If you catch a looter, shoot him. Take things for free, but if you catch looters, shoot them. Aren't they allowing the capacity to altercate perception based on whom it is taking something for free within this statementation? Are the mirror aware of what they are, what is being implied here? Reports have also been shared of people being stripped naked and beaten in the snow, although it has not been confirmed by authorities. I wonder if that's because the military is involved in this. Of course it wouldn't be confirmed by the authorities. The police of Ukraine would be mad to start trying to criticize the Ukrainian military right now. They'd be mad. The Ukrainian military would crush them. They're in a war. The police are going to support the war efforts. And in a Nazi country, the war efforts involve the dehumanization of colonialized peoples. That always happens. This is racism through and through. Local media in Ukraine have shared videos of Russian soldiers looting grocery shops and banks amid claims they are running low on rations. I mean, that does happen in a war. I find it difficult to think that the Russians would be running low on rations, though, and I also find it difficult to think that they would be going after banks, but possible. I mean, they are an imperialist force, and imperialist forces do tend to ransack economic bases, but normally for resources. I mean, money alone is useful in a capitalist order, but it's not the priority. I don't know. I'm speaking with no authority in that position. I don't know. So don't take my word on that one statement, this one here. I'm pointing out with my hand, but I have a mouse to point it out with. I should probably use that. Yeah, I take anything I've said on this specific statement with salt, because I don't fucking know. As someone who's Russian. Meanwhile, a woman named Elana was previously praised as a local hero when she destroyed a drone reportedly used for looking for empty flats to target by looters with a jar of tomatoes. Where the I don't know, man. I don't know. The thing that made this weird is that, like, so if this is a drone, what this is implying is a public drone used for, but then she goes on about, like, we smashed it to bits and binned it in several different bins because it might be tracked. Here. As if the looters, whom are checking to see if people are there or not because they're afraid of confrontation, so they're looking for empty places so they can do the easy thing and just get things without confrontation, would confrontate you over the destroyed. I don't know. I just, when I see contradictions in a story, it makes me a bit iffy. And like I say, the reason why I'm being iffy is because the term looter here is being used in a very provocative fashion. They're not saying, oh, there's people looting. They're very much, when we look at the grander wide scale of the reports, it's being used as a way to target people of minority groups, which is not on. But this is off topic anyway, relatively speaking. I mean, the looters who are using drones to spot into people's flats cannot be comparable to the term looter being used over the head of Romani people and, in general, people who are caught looting for food, because a lot of people are looting for food because there's no fucking food for them, and shops are denying them food because shops are being incredibly ethno nationalistic about whom actually gets access to food. People really need to understand that this situation is as bad as it is as well because of how much both sides don't care about Ukraine. I mean, Russia and America. The US just wants to play its geopolitics against rising imperial powers. Russia wants to rise on the imperial stage, as China does too. China already has, but Russia wants to rise more on the imperial stage. I mean, the war in Georgia and other things like that are great examples of it, of what the annexation of Georgia, parts of Georgia. Um, if Putin and his Russia cared so much about the Ukrainian issue, they would have armed the anarchists in Ukraine that were fighting the Ukraines. They would have armed the actual communists and not prioritized national Bolsheviks, which are just fucking Nazis with extra steps. And they would have dealt with the problem years ago, not perpetuated it for ages to make a crisis situation out of it. They are playing by the Anglosphere imperialist playbook, bit for fucking bit, tid for fucking tad, tick for fucking tack. Or tit for tat as well. There's that one too. And this issue has managed to rise to a point where we now are dealing with Nazis committing crimes against humanity. And this is the start of it. This is the start of it. It's only going to get worse. This is nothing compared to what they're capable of. And you know what? This might not even be the worst of what is happening that we've been talking of over the last week and a half. Because there's so much that we probably ain't even hearing of. Who knows what massacre here or what massacre there is going down? Because I fucking don't. And we need to, that's why we need to be keeping our eyes, ears, and our hearts open. Because the people, the lowest people, the minority people, the minorities, the minority groups as well. Well, that's what I meant by minority people. I'm trying to word this in a way that. So, the lowest of the Ukrainian people and the minority groups within Ukraine are suffering more than they ever could be. I'm not English right. Could be suffering massacres, genocides, and anything in between. This could be worsening to greater heights than we have any mentality of. Persecution of Crimean Tatars in Crimea by Russia after annexation. Yeah, of course, it's two-way stream in this retrospect because Russia wants to turn eastern Ukraine into just Slavo-Russia rather than the Russo-Ukraini. It's Slavo-Russo-Ukraini, Slavo-Ukraini. That's what Ukraine is split up, and then you've got the Tatars and other different groups that live within that region. Russia, just like failures in the Soviet Union, are repeating that Russophilic tendency to oppress the Tatar people. Yeah, I mean, Islamophobia is not uncommon in both Russia and China. The Engelsist was listening to a Guantanamo survivor, and he was talking about how a Muslim came from China from the Xinjiang region. I can't remember. Yeah, from a Uyghur Muslim. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. A Uyghur Muslim from Xinjiang went over. Was moved over into Guantanamo Bay, and what makes both me and the Engels is quite afraid of the mistreatment of the Uyghur people is that this Uyghur person turned around and said, "Thank goodness I'm with the Americans because the Americans will just shoot me for being a Muslim, whilst the Chinese will make me rescind my Islamic faith, give up my Islamic faith." Like that hit hard, man, because that's showing the cultural genocidal practices that I've mentioned before, from the perspective of a Muslim, and I cannot see any reason why a Guantanamo Bay survivor would just be pulling that out of his ass. It sounds like a truthful experience to me. Um, it's an issue that we'll be getting to another point. But yeah, Russia and China, um, uh, they are they have their own they have their own Islamophobic issues. They both supported the war on terror. Um, China literally has a thing in its like anti-terrorism act in Xinjiang that turns around and says if you have a weird beard, you're up for investigation. I don't know what defines a weird beard, but sure. But of course, it happens on both sides, and that's the point I'm getting is that the both sides are in such a they're in such an administrative a demonstrable position because they don't care for the rights of minorities. They don't care for the struggle against fascism as a whole. Putin can go denazification, denazification, denazification. But if you believe in fascism yourself, it just means that he doesn't like one form of fascism. He's up for the others. And it's undeniable that the Putin-led regime is a fascistic one. What is remotely liberal about the Russian economy or the Russian social system? And what's remotely communist about it either? It's neither. It's neither communist nor it's liberal, which means it's got to be in the ballpark of fascism. There's not much. You either go for socialism, you go for liberal capitalism, or you go for fascism within the context of capitalism, which we just call fascism, nice and easy, or fascism within the context of socialism, social fascism, like the Christovites. There's not much decision for in-betweens there. Like, well, there isn't really any in-betweens. There's no in-betweens. There's no middle ground on principle. And Putin's principles are firmly in the ballpark of fascism. Romani people are a diaspora nation. Romani people are a diaspora nation. Their people have scattered far and wide because of the treatment that they've had. I mean, there are plenty of Romani travelers all over Europe, or at least plenty, given how many are left after all the genocides they've been through. Bless them. Bless them. I mean, there's so many Romani people who don't even know their own language. There's Romani people in Argentina. But the main pointation to be made here is that we need to keep our voices loud, our eyes, ears, and our minds open, because as much as the biggest point on staying loud and not committing to silence is to not commit to the silence on the Middle East, for in which silence on the Palestinian or Yemenis issue is committing to the genocide that is going on there. Silence is genocide. But it's the same here. Silence on the struggle of the Romani people and the minorities in Ukraine who are suffering because of Ukrainian fascism, Russian invasion, and US and British imperialism is to commit to their genocide too. Because West or East does not care about these people's struggles. They happenstantively ignore them. The only reason Russia would even acknowledge it is because it would be beneficial for their war. But they're not going to take these things into account, actually deal with them. No, it's politics and politics only. Actually, as we've seen with the British here, they'll go out of their way to obfuscate the issue as they're just doing it to loot us. That's what they've done. That's why I went through the actual nailing of Romani people to lampposts first before I went for the looter article, because you need the preliminary context of what they're working off here before you actually see the bourgeois news source try and obfuscate this as just some vigilante justice. This is more than just some vigilante justice. This is racist oppression of Romani people. Yeah, neutrality and silence only benefits the killer to continue. Absolutely. And it's why, just as much as raising this issue, we need to be raising the issue of Palestine and the issue of Yemen. I still need to do a piece of content. Well, I say I need to. I want to before I shoot off the hospital next week. I I promise, like, I'll go next week. I'm not gonna hold it off again. I swear. I should probably cross my fingers saying that, to be fair, given how many times I've failed. But before I go to the hospital next week, I'm hoping to get a video out on the Yemenis crisis, because I have not yet made content on the Yemenis crisis yet. I've talked about the crisis in different issues related to it, but I've not dedicated a piece of material to it, and I find I am insulting the situation by not doing so, but having talked about the Ukraine crisis. So I will try and make content on the MM before I go to hospital. But I'm hoping to be in hospital no longer than 2 weeks, so I should be back in time to do something if I fail anyway. I mean, if it will actually get me the healthcare I need, um, the healthcare service, you might want to be holding at gunpoint, not me. But wait, did default say no to debate now? Lol. Yeah, I did. I do need to make a video about Assange. And getting caught up with everything, there was someone else I wanted to make a video on about 3 months ago, and I can't even remember what it was. Like, my job as line holder in MRN essentially equates to I take on a shit ton of fucking stress. Not that I'm entirely complaining, I am somewhat, but I'm not complaining about it on a whole, because I understand that the stress is necessary, and it's how to put it. Um, yeah, then just film it. Now, there's a cool feature on the computer. Press start and press G at the same time, and you get the Xbox bar up. And if you get in the widget menu, you can get a capture thing up, and you can capture your screen and your audio and all that stuff. I think your mic has to stay like unmuted on the capture settings for it to capture audio. I can't remember, but you can capture everything on there. You're late, but here you've come at the end. I'm basically just concluding. And rambling, because I've always got to fill at least 20 minutes of the runtime of me rambling to try and end it. Stress does come with the field. That is one of them, yes. But that's what ends up happening, is that because I'm dealing with a lot of stress and I'm handling so many different bits and pieces of information, not just within MRM, but as a line holder, I have a very important position in regards to connecting with the on the street revolutionaries we work with in MRN through net. So I only not only do I get requests from those folk, but I'm also having to take on a lot of information from those folks and process it, and even things I have to keep to myself and stew on because of them being important crises issues at that moment in time and to take into consideration. So there's a lot of these in and out layers that make it quite hard for me to remember my own schedule because I'm having to constantly reorganize the already lack of a functional schedule I have to suit in all the new bits of information I found out, all the new delineations that are occurring because of X and Y contradiction that's causing new problems to arise for the on the street revolutionaries we're engaging with, and of course because global politics keeps utterly exploding into fuck. I mean, I find it disgusting, but not unsurprising from a country that supported the war on terror. But I'd need to know more information on the situation. I mean, he may be more specifically citing towards within the Tatar region, blaming Tatar Islamic orgs specifically, not just Islamic orgs in Russia as a whole, because I mean, it would be a way of trying to can their culture because imperialist nations constantly try and crush the culture of the minorities in which they try to oppress. Yeah, you do have to be careful about Wahhabi-backed Muslim organizations. Okay, let me reword it like this. So, the issue that amounts to here is that they take that there are some bad orgs that exist. Mind you, that should be for the Muslim community to deal with, not Orthodox Christian Russia. Um, but they're basically using them as an example to bastardize Islam. That's likely the occurrence here. Because if I'm to use China as an example, China has no problem. China doesn't ban you from being a Muslim, but they do make the laws in a way where it's easy to assign an Islamic person as being terroristic. Like I went on before, you come here. One of the rules in the anti-China, the Anti-Terrorism Act of Xinjiang that can have you supposed as a suspicious terrorist is if you have quote a weird beard end quote. Define a weird beard, I don't fucking know, but I imagine it has something to do with a racist perspective of people who subscribe to Islam, which is weirdly off canter because Islamic people are very. My razor machine thing stopped working. I'm sorry, officer. I have a weird beard, but my razor stopped working. It is not my fault. Get stopped for having a weird beard. I'm sorry, officer. I was on my way to the barber. uh, China just culturally genocides you. You are aware cultural genocide is the worst form of genocide. And as the Uyghur Muslim said, quote, "Thank goodness I am in the Americans' hands At least they will kill me for being a Muslim and not make me rescind my faith. End quote. That was the quotes of a from a well, it was stated to be the quotes of a Uyghur Muslim who had come from China into Guantanamo Bay by a survivor of Guantanamo Bay. Kills you, then locks you up. Hell yeah, they did. Hell yeah, they did. That would be useful. A list would help. Funding is a weird thing to request. Follow the money, as they say. Yeah, but Russia isn't following the money from the sounds of things. I mean, what's it? See if Saudi Arabia is involved, you mean? Trail the money back to the Wahhabists. Uh, Wahhabism is problematic, but we've seen the way that the US uses Wahhabism. Russia is no different. To find that some of them are Wahhabist would still not justify the fact that many of them are likely not, because the Tatar people are being oppressed and their culture is being oppressed, and their culture has got a very massive majority of Muslim people involved in it. So ban to ban Tatar people, they're going to crack down on their culture. This is a common behavior of imperialists, and Russia is playing by the Anglosphere imperial playbook. Um, and they're also very great buddy buddies with China, so their logic is not going to be too far different from theirs. Russia's imperialism needs to be bankrolled by a bigger power. They're not stable enough at this current period in time, which is why they're so reliant. Well, they tried to be reliant on the US, but Democrats weren't too fond of that. Neither were the British. I wonder what game the British were playing in that regard. But just aside, the Russians are relying on the Chinese for their funding. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses aren't extremists, but Jehovah's Witnesses also don't deserve to exist. Fight me. It's just fucking bourgeois Protestantism. Fight me. I have a fucking auntie as a Jehovah's Witness. They're not as bad as Mormons, though. Fuck. Yeah, they have been oppressed, but that doesn't stop their religion being a petty bourgeois perversion of Christianity. Which triangle? Triangles were different colors. Well, I don't know, but regardless, like I'm just getting at what I mean. Jehovah's Witness. So Jehovah's Witness is a religion that believes that there are only a set number of seats in heaven, and that you got to sort of like give so much to be bought out purple. Let me fucking Google that. I know what the red and the pink triangle are. Oh, they have their own specific triangle. Yeah. So the reason why, yeah, because they refused to use the Hitler salute actually, and their pacifism, but it was also because they refused to adopt the Hitler salute and other Nazi symbolic gestures. Not because of their religion itself. Like I'm saying, the religion itself is bourgeois. The whole idea of you can buy a better seat if you got enough green comes from the Jehovah's Witness mentality. Purchase your way to heaven because there's only a limited number of seats. It's inhumane. And Jehovah's Witnesses are ridiculously evangelical about the rapture. And they see the rapture as like the utter end of the world sort of thing, not the traditional rapture where the world was supposed to be saved and continue living, you know, the war against evil, Jesus comes back to life, fights against the evil, and then the earth continues to exist. The whole floating up to heaven naked and all the evil people just stay on the earth thing is a later change to what the rapture is supposed to mean, or the second coming of Jesus, as it was originally fucking called. But Jehovah's Witnesses are very fatalistic of this idea that we got to buy our way into heaven, and then this certain people who bought their way will go up in the rapture, which is definitely going to come in the next 10 or 20 years. Um, uh, Protestantism takes on this mentality too, certainly in the modern day, but it has done over the last 200 years anyway, of what's it? Believing that anything to change the world is pointless because the world's going to end very, very soon. Is that Holy Trinity? Because if you're on about the Holy Trinity, I imagine you're on about Anglicanism. But yeah, no, they shouldn't be getting oppressed in Russia. I mean, imagine it's likely of the same canter because they're very anti-war. Uh, well, sometimes. I mean, let's not talk about the American Jehovah's Witnesses while talking about anti-war. I fair enough, fair enough. Fucking burn me, burn me on that one. You have burn me on that one. Oh, HT, you're on about the I tell you what, boy, oh boy. Being banned in most countries doesn't make it not an Islamophobic move. The UAE? Oof. That's not a good match. Ooh. Not in Lebanon. Ooh, interesting change of gear. It is sometimes old, and Wikipedia is different by region. So, like Lebanese Wikipedia would be different to British Wikipedia, etc., etc. Which Syrian revolution? Oh, the revolution. You mean the color revolution? Bullshit. The Arab Spring. But I mean, what's it? Considering we've drifted on for another 20 minutes into who knows where, I will. Oh, what was that second? The party works to ignite the Syrian revolution and heavily invests in it. I mean, I imagine they probably wanted a Syrian revolution being ignited. I imagine they didn't support the outcome because I could understand why a lot of people got caught on into a wrong and into a wrong and thing. Because I mean, was the color revolution itself uh, is illegitimate in what it was seeking to succeed and implement because of what US was trying to do. Because what its successful implementation was meant to be was destabilization. But I imagine there was shit tons of people who did get caught up in it, who were serious and did want change. I mean, you couldn't organize something like that without those people existing to begin with, really. Uh, it's one of the things I think both sides fail to take into consideration at the issue. Those who support it and those who are against it. I'm against it, but I take it into consideration. I guess I contradicted myself. You know what I meant, though. You know what I meant. Fucking pedants. Hillary's got COVID. Well, I mean, this year's been pretty shit, but that's a brightener, isn't it? No, you can't fabricate upheaval entirely. So to make a color revolution, you need a country that is in a bad position. Sanctioned, abused, no longer has support of the big Eastern social imperialist platform. Syria was in a situation where it wasn't supporting its people as well as it could have. That's why they were able to abuse it. And because Syria had its own problems with the treatment of um, Assyrians and of Kurdish people. These problems did exist before. What I'm saying is that for them to organize this, they would need to be controlling the leadership. Because that's all a color revolution needs. It needs the leadership under control. I mean, this comes into the point we were talking in DMs earlier about why the labor aristocracy can't be trusted in a position of control because they're the most corruptible position of control. And therefore, that if they're in the leadership, that leadership is so easily bought off that then therefore you can organize these color revolution situations. What I'm saying is the majority of people whom are lower class, whom were there for serious reasons. And in a capitalist system like Syria, those lower class people were oppressed and still are oppressed and still have good reason to want a revolution. Syria is not a socialist country and is neither building socialism. It's a capitalist country with capitalist influences and interests. planning them. Yes. For them to actually happen, you need the material conditions to create the support. Stop making me shout at 9 o'clock at night. For them to happen, you need the material conditions. I could plan a fucking protest. If the people aren't suffering, how can it fucking happen? You can literally plan anything. I could plan anything out of my arsehole. You can't organise it if there's not the material conditions to gain the normal support. Otherwise, you're just a bunch of dickheads who are paid off. America doesn't have the money to have hundreds of millions of people on the payroll. Therefore, the material conditions need to exist. So yes, there was the material conditions for people to be rallying behind Western organized protests. It would have to exist. Otherwise, the Western would be organizing only their own people. And there wouldn't be millions of people. There would be thousands, hundreds of thousands at most. Material conditions need to exist for such things to be planned. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to plan it at all. And in a third world country, those conditions are going to exist. In a capitalist country, those conditions are going to exist. Fucking hell, man. Put it this way. If I am planning a party, if I'm planning a party and no one wants to come because it's not in their interests, they wouldn't come. But if I plan a party and it is in their interests, they would come. You know, it's in their interest to get pissed. If I plan that party and it's in their interest to get pissed, but then I manipulated them and controlled them, that party is then a problem still. I'm agreeing with the point. I'm saying that it's still a problem what the Western did. But to obfuscate, which in your initial statement you did, yeah, the point I made was compliant. Exactly the point I made. Because they were organized by people that weren't thinking long term. An unorganized. Yes, and this is what I was getting to, because an unorganized masses, or those who are organized by deceivers, won't have that long term movement. Like, there was masses that could still be required, and the conditions still exist today. If anything, the war has increased those conditions. It's just the war has also solidified support into the ballpark of Assad, because obviously you would be, because they're under a siege. Protect the system before they start squabbling over who leads who. protect the nation from the enemies. Yeah, the CIA's been planning color revolutions in every nation since it ever existed. That's just the CIA. It's Lawrence of Arabia tactics. Lawrence of Arabia was doing this during the revolutions in the 1910s, and a lot of those revolutions were socialistic. Some even outright fucking communist, if I remember rightly, because I remember Alpha Bra talking about it. Although he is CPGBML, so take it with a grain of salt. Also, you don't help yourself with confusion when sometimes you give me one word answers. Like, I prefer it when people write as much of a sentence that they're gonna write, what write the sentence out so I can read it out, because separated statements separates context to me because I've got to keep looking through different wordings. Like, I will write out things as much as possible to the extent of which context is necessary because there's a delay. If you stop and then send it, there's a seconds of delay between it where I'm going to eventually cut you off and just start speaking because I don't know when the end is. You're not always using the 200. Yeah, but you're not using even 10 characters sometimes. I'm not on about right now. I'm on about up past a bit where you're using one word sometimes and it's 10, 15 words that don't even make up 110 characters. I got no problem with, the bit from, the last three ones you did before the I have 200 characters to work with. That's fine. It's when it gets ridiculously short and pattern breath, like, and there's these seconds of delay between it. My head's spinning round. I remember I have dyslexia. I'm fucking struggling here. That and the cognitive capabilities of a donkey on fucking meth. And I thought this stream was going to be short. I get some weird notifications off Facebook sometimes. It concerns me. The Americans didn't want the Syrians to join the UN intervention. Syria did it, re-established relations, and managed to plan for the Conference of Madrid. Hafez, Hafez, Hafez was buying time because the. See, now I know that there's more to come. I know there's more to come now. Oh, wait. Kurds in Syria had zero rights prior to 2011. Relations with the Syrian people wasn't all too good before 2011 either. Uh, because the USSR was collapsing and he knew an American strike will come to Syria next. In 2003, the USA approached Syria after Baghdad fell. They were willing to make Bashar their number one man if he turns in. Well, I mean, the British were also willing to advance relations. I mean, we had decent relations with Assad until about 2006, I think. 2007. When did the start the Syrian like instance was 2011? Yes, so probably about 2007 2008. I think Britain started a good relationship with Hafez. I mean, sorry, Bashar. Um, Ahmad Jabri and other Palestinian leaders and so on. Bashar refused, of course, and then a couple years later, a massive right-wing protest took place in Lebanon against Syrian presence, so Syria left, and it just went downhill until the civil war because the CIA took out the old plans and modified them. I see, I see. Oh, if you want a trick bit as well, what I do with the character thing is I write it all out and then I just cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste, and keep chopping bits off and pressing enter because then you can streamline it all. You just gotta get a good eye for how much two characters are. 'Cause I don't fucking count. I just guess or use the notepad app because then you can actually highlight and it'll tell you how many numbers you've highlighted and you can be anally specific if you really want to. Because I understand the need to be anally specific. I can be that way. I missed something from Red Fenian actually that was like way up here. There we go. Uh, Pedants. I've been called that before. Good evening, by the way. Good evening. Quite late. Oh, Albright died. Oh, not inclined to believe Obama was trying to overthrow Assad. The 1980s plan was basically backing the Muslim Brotherhood to mobilize people into an overthrow of the regime and creating Sunni Shia tensions and start a civil war. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Mobilize the youth mainly. It does sound very familiar, but what's it? You see, they want to get it. They want to preach an environment of class collaborationism. It's I mean, the concept of this type of order is useful for both fascism and colonialism. I mean, fascism and colonialism are very, very related things. They're not exactly the same, but they're very fucking similar. And class collaborationism is useful when taking over a country and destabilizing it, because it spits in the face of the system at hand. It's not a very easy thing. Um, them propping you up as a comprador class doesn't mean that they didn't oppress you. But I mean, what's it? I wouldn't know the issue on that. I wouldn't know if that's the actual case of the matter either. From what's being said, the Shiites were generally oppressed with the worst material conditions. There we go. They propped up the Maronites. That makes more sense from discussions that we've had that the Maronites would be the comprador position, not the Shiites. Especially given the current relations within the system. I mean, well, you did say that they propped up the Shia movement, the Muslims as the ruling class. You did just say that. Ah, should probably use context because we're talking about Lebanon at the moment, I think. Or are we? No, we're not. We're talking about Syria. Okay, I got confused again. Com- People, people should just be extreme with context. Let's be extreme with context. Where's Red Fenian Punk? We need the pedantism back. To be fair, I'm a bit of a pedant myself. I don't know why I complaining at people's pedantry, but fuck you all. You're all pedants. Alawite. Oh yeah, fuck. Because the Alawite, I forgot. Yeah, because you got the split between the Alawite and the Shia Muslims within Syria, haven't you? Because like one of them has greater dominance within, is it the military, and then the other one has greater dominance within the government. Uh, take salt with what I'm saying. I am English. Take salt with all I've said about the Middle East. I'm English. I should have said that at like the start of this discussion. Military and government in Syria is, oh, both of them are Alawite. Ah, basically Syria is Sunni majority. Okay, okay. I mean Pentecostals. We are Maronites Pentecostals. I didn't think they were. What? I didn't think we were on about Pentecostals. And Pentecostals aren't Protestants, at least from what I remember. I remember Pentecostals agree that you have to actually put work in to go to heaven. You can't just pray away evil and haha float away. Like, um, at least from my experience. I mean, white Pentecostals act like Protestants, but Pentecostal is a black Christian form. The Anglo-Saxon colonization of the Pentecostal church is one of the biggest issues that has caused the demarchy drop the drop the Pentecostal church as a represented church under their wing because of the domination of it by whiteness. I think Hafez, when he took power, put in his close people. I mean, that makes sense. The guy come in with a coup. You're not going to expect the best of things with that shit. Um, Alawites are their own thing. In Lebanon, for example, they are their own religious sect recognized by the government. Protestantism means protest of Catholicism. So, yes, it is a wide thing to be a Protestant. Protestantism is complex, and but when someone says Protestant in the modern day, they typically mean Anglican or Frankish Protestantism, because most other Protestantism is either ignored in the case of Middle Eastern and African Protestantism, or is not really even worth mentioning in the case of things like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons. But well, I mean, the Mormons are complicated because they are fascists and they do have a fair amount of power in America. But you know what I mean. Like in the case of actual religious discussion, their religion is very hollow. Some guy found some gold plates, and there's not much to it other than that. Everything else about their religion is more just their history of them being kicked out of everywhere because they literally fucking rob people. Um, I learned about their history during the American West, and they just went around everywhere, treating people like shit, and got kicked out of everywhere because of it. Um, I met fundamentalist Protestant views that aren't close to my own, who opposed Israel, claiming God did not give Israel back to the Jews. I mean, the Demarchist position from the Bundists, the Jewish Demarchists, is that they were banished into a permanent exile because of their mistreatment of Gentiles um, and their ignorance to converts. Um, I didn't blame the Shiites. I'm the one who doesn't fucking know why go on here. It's all within how you guys are playing it. Like I am well aware that regardless, there would still be people who are Shia who would be comprador though. They just probably weren't the majority, given that Maronites had so much power within the French Order, and France is a Christian empire. So they're obviously going to give power to the Christians more than they would to Muslims because it's what benefits them most. Um, well, I mean, yeah, biscuits and bread when it comes to comparing the two. Oh no, fucking don't speak shit like that. What the fuck do you mean? What's the difference? Are you asking politely? Are you a beat taking the piss? Um, because that sounds really sarky with the way it was written. Because if I was asking politely, I'd say, what is the difference between Shia and Sunni, not Shia and Sunni? What's the difference? It just rolls off the tongue in a very Rungan fashion. Well, I mean, there are differentiations in things that they state culturally, though, isn't there? Well, yeah, we're all Muslims in the eyes of Allah, yeah, but I mean, there is cultural differences. Absolutely, absolutely. They should work together and stop killing each other. I agree. I agree. But the imperialists will always go out of their way to stir up fights between the Sunni and the Shia through Wahhabism. Wahhabism is what creates the craters between these two people. Yeah, internet chat looks bad. I do apologize. I'm just concerned at ensuring that no one's beefing with anyone because like I'm trying to referee here and I'm autistic. I can't read through the lines of writing. I need facial features and tones of voices to really understand the emotions people are purveying to me. Messages all read in the same emotion, which is angsty. Well, not really. It's just bland. Everything just looks bland. I think it's the first rift. Is why I have to rely on wording. I have to rely on what type of words are used to contextualize things because it makes things easier. Um, no, and we're basically padding the runtime of this video with stuff that's not even related to it, which will make people less inclined to want to watch it because it'll become a slog. Um, not to be a spoil sport. Um, but we may have lost the point of the video. I mean, I did finish, but we may have committed just as much time to general conversation as we have to the video itself. Evidence I need to just do more streams where I don't even have a topic and we just talk, because apparently these things are really easy for me to just go off on even when I do have a fucking topic to talk about. Yeah, because splitting people up is useful for colonialism. That's how it, dividing people up, making people into conflict. That's why sexism, racism, homophobia, and other stuff like that, transphobia, these things are loved by the imperialists, because the imperialists can use these to split people up and make people fight each other rather than, you know, have people respecting each other and working together. I said the Romani are a diaspora nation. Diaspora. Like the Jews. They don't have a place to be a nation. They are in diaspora. Trying to give the Romani a nation is impossible, because they live all over the place. They're scattered and they're integrated in all the different cultures for the most part, to a degree where they're scattered. Like Romani travelers in different countries have very different cultures to each other, because while they're not integrated in the societies that they're in, they have a form of culture that is integrated to that region, very similarly to how the Semitic ethnicities that make up the different groups of people whom are of the Jewish religious culture are in diaspora. Rights. What protects anyone who's in diaspora? Rights and representation. I mean, Denmarkism is something that really does look into a lot of the issues regarding this. I mean, Bundism deals with the struggle of the Jewish people in their representation as a diaspora people. I'm trying to end it anyway. I've been trying to end it since 40 minutes ago. I did say it was over when you joined. I just come to the end. I was concluding. But, fucking off-topic conversations have drifted on. Like I did say, this was supposed to be a short stream. I'm fucking knackered and I'm fucking feeling like shit. Yes, Ashkenazi originally means Jewish people of I can't remember whether it's of Slavonia or of Russia, but if I remember rightly, Ashkenazi means uh, uh, Jewish Russian. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. It's something I heard someone say. No, Israel is an Anglo imperial state. It's Anglo colonialism, settlerism. Israel is not a Slavic state. Israel is an Anglo-Saxon state. The first set, the first settlers of Israel were not Slavic. They were Anglo-Saxon. Zionism was made in Britain. Mid 1800s. Someone with a peerage. Israel doesn't speak Russian. No, Israel is fucking. What's it? They have Russian speakers because of Ashkenazi Jews who come from Russia. Russo Israelis. No, no, Russo Israelis exist because Ashkenazis originally come from Russia, from what I remember, if I'm right. Ashkenazi typically today means European Jewish, but if I remember rightly, they're originally up in Russia. Why and which do you think Russian Jews may have been pushed out of Russia and have lost their Russian speaking long before Israel was set up? Because a lot of Russian Jews, if not most of them, ended up leaving Russia during the early 1900s because they were being massacred by the Russian Empire for being Russia Bolsheviks, or Jewish Bolsheviks, sorry. Because it was Russia that started that shit. Yeah, it might have an entire party for Russian speakers because of Russo Israelis. That is the thing. Just like there's American Israelis, European Israelis. There's all sorts of speakers in Israel. The language of Israel is not Russian. The language of Israel is fucking what's it? I can't remember what it is. It's the one that's not Hebrew. What's the fucking language that's not Hebrew? They literally have their own fucking language that's based in German. It's based in German and Aramaic, if I remember rightly. I don't even have to fucking Google language of Israel because you can't fucking answer me. Oh no, apparently it is Hebrew. What? What's the other one? I thought there was a different language. Am I getting Hebrew confused with the other one, or is ancient Hebrew different to modern Hebrew? Uh, Fromers. Oh no, it is Hebrew. Yiddish. That's it. Yiddish. Um. Apparently, Yiddish isn't the one that's commonly used in Israel, though. It's Hebrew. I'm getting things confused. Like I say, not a fucking encyclopedia when it comes to these things. But it certainly ain't Russian that's the main language. The main language spoken in Israel, according to this, is Hebrew and Arabic. Israeli population 2021 9.45 million. Number of Russian speakers in Israel 2021. 900,000. 900,000 compared to 9.45 million doesn't sound like 20% to me. Or is it? Actually, no, it might be. It might just, yeah, no, actually, yeah, that is. Wait, what? No, isn't that 10%? Yeah, that's 10%. Yeah, 900,000, that's 10%. I was just laughing at a pathetic Dengoid. Yeah. Stream over, people. Um, which advocated independence through diplomacy and not armed struggle. The French had more trouble in Syria than in Lebanon. The bloc ended up being cooked by Massini at Rome. I don't know whether you've been getting the message, Bad Boy, but I have been saying that I've been trying to end this stream, and you keep putting me in a position where I don't want to cut you off because you're halfway through typing something. Like, like when you joined, I said I was at the end of the topic. There's no need to be sorry. I'm just saying, like, it seems the connection's cutting me off or some shit every time I'm saying it because you're like deep in it and I'm getting all this information and I can't stop because I get interested and then I will go on and on and on. And then next thing you know, it's an hour and 20 minutes of me getting enticed by all the beautiful shit you're telling me. And only 40 minutes of the actual video topic. Yeah, like Gingivitis said. So, uh, to bring it back to the original topic somehow, um, we mustn't, fucking English. We must keep on talking about the minority peoples whom are being oppressed in this war, because that is what will be obfuscated in the big East versus West, Russia versus America. No one's considering the little people on the ground, and I mean, the imperialists are going out of their way to rewrite the stories of them into it's just about them being looters and nothing to do with the actual Nazism that's going on in Ukraine right now. And of course, we must always keep rescinding back to the issues regarding the um, genocides that are happening around the world, the wars that are happening around the world right now that are being silenced and obfuscated by people caring so much more about war now that it's in Europe, but not given the same courtesy to the wars, mistreatments, and poor human rights around the world. Um, well, Eurasianism is an attempt at imperialism from a different angle, rather than using the domination of the seas. It's the domination of the largest landmass, an altercation of the fashion of trade, of which imperialism has been so used to, and the fashion of domination, of which it's been so used to. Keep steadfast to the problems of which the world is diving into now, as imperialist hegemony has been lost by the US. It no longer holds this position. There are multiple imperialists on the table now that wield just as much power in certain areas of the US, if not more. And the US is terrified by that, and you're going to see it lash out. You are going to see fascism become a much, much more common part of the playbook of the imperialist order within the home countries and abroad. And you are going to see a devolution into war, and you're going to see, just like every time the world devolves into global conflict, you are going to see a larger rise in anti-colonialism. Every world war that has ever happened, we have had a wider span of decolonization. From the decolonization of the Russian Empire, unfortunately not as well as it could have been, but nonetheless the decolonization of the Russian Empire, to then decolonial movements all across the Middle East, all across Africa, all across Asia, all across South America, around the fucking world. This time, capitalism will not withstand the decolonization movement that will erupt from this crisis, from this Great Depression, from the altercation of imperialist hegemony. Be steadfast, stick true to your principles, and always remember that communists must, and the socialists in general, must not only think about the long term, but must be thinking within the short term region. I mean, there's a good reason why the Panthers started programs for educating, feeding, providing healthcare for the people. I will catch you in the next video, and as it seems, I should start doing general chat streams where we just chat, because everyone seems to like fucking distracting me with those in the normal streams. So hopefully, if I do some general chat streams, I can lower the distraction rate. I know that's not going to be the case, but I thought I'd crack a joke and see how that lands. That's it. But yeah, nah, yeah, nah, yeah. I'll catch yous next time. Red salute, douchebags.